This week is jam-packed. The 50-year mortgage took over the internet this week with tons of political posts on both sides. Zillow gets another class action lawsuit accused of using kickbacks, pushing clients to use their loans. Fannie Mae removes the credit score minimum requirement for desktop underwritten loans. New York City wrestles with real estate's next move as Mamdani poises to take over the city. And remember those big bonuses dished out by companies during the Compass acquisition era? Yeah, they're called clawbacks, and they're causing quite a stir in the legal world. Plus, during this melee, we might just need a pulse check on compliance. Could you lose your license for using AI? Here to discuss the news headlines with me this week are Matthew Fine of Blueprint Home Loans, Summer Goralik, a DRE compliance expert, and Sheridan Wall, real estate reporter for The Real Deal in Manhattan. Welcome back to the Clean Clothes. A new plan, courtesy of the Trump administration, is causing waves through the internet. Check out these stories.
So President Trump just came up with a solution to make housing more affordable, which is to stretch the standard 30-year mortgage to 50 years.
Is that really a good idea?
It's not even a big deal. I mean, you know, you go from 40 to 50 years, and what it means is you pay something less from 30. That some people had a 40, and then now they have a 50. All it means is you pay less per month. You pay it over a longer period of time.
Housing Director confirms administration working on a 50-year mortgage.
I just did a little analysis. 30-year, $400,000, six and a quarter. $2,462 is the payment. 50-year, 6 and a quarter, $400,000, $2,179. So about a $300 difference on a $400,000 mortgage. However, next to no principal is paid off in those first 10 years. Very little. And then it accelerates.
The 15 and the 20-year mortgage interest rate is lower than the 30-year mortgage interest rate. So do you honestly think they're going to do 50 years at the same as a 30-year?
I'd like to introduce you to Matthew Fine of Blueprint Home Loans. He's our friend and partner, and we just need the inside scoop on how this 50-year mortgage is going to play out in our industry. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here. So I'm sure your inbox was aflutter with messages. So how do you feel about this 50-year mortgage proposal?
I feel like most people are just getting up in arms about it a little bit. For me, it seems like it could solve a problem, right? So for me, on the mortgage side, it always goes back to what is the goal, right? Because when something new, if we were to all of a sudden release a 7-year ARM, for example, in 7 years, your interest rate's going to be, people would be like, wait a minute, what? That sounds wild, right? So the 50-year mortgage, I can see both perspectives, why people are against it, why some are for. But home affordability is a real issue. You know, a lot of the conversations I have with home buyers that are coming to me, they're doing anything they can to lower their monthly payment as they're starting a family, as they're first buying a home. So I do think from that standpoint, depending on the goal of the borrower, a 50-year mortgage could provide the ability for someone to get into a home at a lower, more affordable monthly cost.
Yeah, I mean, did you see Glennda Baker's post? We just played it, but did you see
No, I
that at
haven't
all?
seen it,
Okay,
no.
all right, you're gonna see it. So on Instagram, Glennda Baker, who is a influencer, she always introduces herself as a realtor from Atlanta, Georgia. People see her as a thought leader, I think. And she kind of went on a rant. I had agents at my company also feeling very much like this is a scam. That's what they're saying, it's a scam. But then I went into the office to do training for my agents, and a broker at the firm also came into the office. And 2 of the 3 people that besides me that were in that place started their real estate ownership career with a 40-year loan. A 40-year loan.
Right.
And I'm like, you guys got 40-year loans because that's what allowed you to get into the house, and they both refinanced within 1 year. So I'm like, this is the short-sightedness of these online hyper-politicized responses to this idea. Though, like you, I also understand if you kept any loan for 30 years, 50 years, it looks ridiculous on paper.
Right.
Nobody does that.
Of course.
Nobody does that.
Nobody does it. And that's a lot of how, nobody wants to have a 7% interest rate for 30 years anyways, right? The goal is always the market will improve, things are cyclical, you'll refinance. On average, most people stay in their loan for 3 to 5 years. So if anything, it's just a short-term solution.
Exactly.
I mean, think about how many people want interest-only loans. I talk to people all the time. They will do anything for the absolute lowest monthly payment.
Exactly.
And it
so
doesn't matter.
Here's what I thought. And I said, if I had a client who was looking at this type of loan, I would say, look at a 30-year amortization schedule, see how much principal would actually have been paid down each year, and make a principal payment to match that so that you have a bit of increased equity. If your concern is, because this is part of what the online chaos is, and again, you know, I have a love-hate affair with social media. It's very hard to get your point across, but even when you try to, people don't really read it before they have some kind of gut reaction to it. Like on this very thread where I was like, you know, wait, let's slow down a second. Let's think about this. If you're making principal payments on a 30-year schedule and you're just, you know, you're able to get the house, do you want 100% interest rate as in being a renter for the rest of your life? Or do you want to take advantage of this buyer's market that we still have right now, get in, refinance when your position is better, when the rates come down into a conventional loan, but at least you get the house? Exactly to your point, the objective. And they called me names. This one lady was like, that's the most ignorant thing I've ever heard. You know, this is such bull. I was like, whoa, I'm certainly one of the benefactors of such type of creative financing. If you want to talk predatory lending, let's look at FHA loans. My first house I ever got, 3% FHA. I had trash credit, like 540, like horrible credit. And they still gave me a loan, 3%, and I had to pay mortgage insurance. So I'm like, is that not predatory? Like having a 97% of my property mortgage? Of course.
When it comes to numbers in the housing market, there is no shortcut secret. All risk is baked in some way, shape, or form. So it does come down, again, to the consumer being educated on what they're stepping into. Nobody is pushing anybody into a 50-year loan, throwing it at them and say, you know, the people that are pushing back and being like, that's ridiculous, you're basically renting, then don't do it.
Right, exactly.
Who said you need to take a 50-year mortgage
I'm glad we
anyway?
agree on this. So would you put one of your clients into a 50-year loan?
If that was the goal, and you're telling me that they had there's a solution for them to get into an appreciating asset that they could refinance out of in a year to 3 to 5 years, absolutely. Why not? That's the thing about housing. That's why people invest in the housing market, is because you're investing in appreciating asset. This allows people another option to get them into the house.
Yep. I honestly, I don't see it as much different than a 50-year arm of sorts. You know, it's kind of like, at least you know the payment's not going to go up, which was the problem in the 2008 situation, is that these arms were adjusting, going crazy from a low interest rate to a high interest rate. People couldn't afford it. That's not this scenario. This scenario gives you the lowest monthly payments. It's still going to be amortized over some amount of time. Nobody's going to keep it for that long.
Right.
But at least it gets you in. You can pay your principal down as long as there's no prepayment penalty, and it's kind of like like an arm with no adjustment.
Absolutely. And again, for me, it always goes back to, what is the goal, right? Like what is your long-term financial goal in general? And I think that is such an overlooked question that a lot of people don't even talk about. Even, can I afford this house? It's like, okay, well, you can qualify for it, but what is your other spending? What is your family planning looking like? There's so many factors that are involved in this that I just think, and again, if you were to look at the 50 years, you're paying a considerable amount more of interest. But again, make principal payments, meet with someone. You know, when you're buying a house, you need to have some form of support in a team behind you that's going to help, at least with the finances, with the home buying decision. So that's just another facet of it, is like, let's make a payment plan where you're paying down principal, right? There's no prepayment penalties on these type of loans anyways. So, I mean, also, there's a lot of higher end clientele that I deal with that they're only interested in interest only loans, right? On these large loan sizes, on these $1 million mansions. And it's because they want the flexibility of, yes, they can have a lower payment, but they know that they're going to make principal payments anyway. So why not just have a lower?
That's the hack. It's like almost for a lender like you, maybe you have to add something into your plan where if your client ends up taking on this type of loan, you're like, all right, how about this? In 3 years or 2 years or every year, we're going to have a call. I know you're the master of follow-up, right? So I don't need to tell you this, but like, you take on a little bit more of a guidance kind of thing here, saying like, hey,
Right.
interest rates are here. Maybe now's a good time to refinance.
We're always incentivized to, get our clients a better monthly payment and look at stuff. So my goal always when I'm working with people is not to just sell them a loan and be a salesman and goodbye. I want to do people's loans for their entire life, do their family, right? And so that comes with also being an advisor. It's not what everybody is trying to do, but at least for me, yes, there is that extra level of care and looking out for your, your client and consumer.
Yep.
And also one thing that I'm not really seeing them talk about, a 40-year mortgage compared to even a 30-year has a higher interest rate for a reason. So that the risk factor again is baked in. You're paying a little bit higher of an interest rate. Of course, your monthly payment is down, but again, it's not like you're blindly just going into this and that is baked in.
Right. It's baked in because you're borrowing the money for a longer period of time.
Why would an investor want to lend out this money
for
at the
50 years?
Right, at the same rate, right? So.
Right. Well, I'm going to move on one
Yes,
second. I like
of
what
course.
I'm picking up what you're laying down. So you and I talked a few weeks ago about Zillow because you had a phone call. The mask is off. Okay, this is the guy I was talking about when I said a lender had explained to me that someone he had talked to said, well, we're incentivized, right? I mean, I don't want to tell the story. You tell the story. And an
Not
agent
one
said
agent,
not one.
multiple, many agents. I could pull up text message documentation saying, hey, I would love to work with you. I'm still waiting to have a lead that isn't through Zillow, but to be honest, I have to.
Right.
Was the verbiage. I have to because they incentivize. And really it was from a friend that recently moved over to a Zillow Flex team. And she's like, dude, I just got to send them to Zillow Lender because they give us better quality leads that way.
Right. So listen to this. So Real Estate News on November 8th published an article, Zillow accused of using kickbacks to boost mortgage business. So buyers, this is what the lawsuit alleges. Buyers who clicked contact agent or similar buttons on Zillow's platform were routed not to the listing agent, but to a Zillow affiliated buyer's agent in the Flex program or Premier Agent program. We know that racket. Everybody knows that racket. Okay, those agents allegedly had quotas or incentives tied to sending leads and pre-approvals to Zillow's own lending arm, Zillow Home Loans. Okay, so for example, access to higher quality leads was conditioned on sending a certain number of clients to Zillow Home Loans. The complaint contends that these arrangements violate RESPA and state consumer protection laws, and it claims that the steering meant the buyers didn't get their free choice of lender, which is state law, as my understanding. Not an attorney, but that's my understanding. It further alleges that the cost of these referral lead generation and commission structure inflates overall home buying costs, higher purchase price, higher commissions to the detriment of buyers. I call a little wah-wah on that. I don't think that stands. But if these incentives aren't disclosed to the buyer, which I believe in this case, the person with whom this story started actually said she had no idea that her agent was either incentivized or made to pay some kind of a fee as a result of using the Flex program, but then ultimately got like a kickback if she ended up going with Zillow Home Loans. That disclosure is the part I think that would violate RESPA.
Yeah.
So you're seeing it in the real world. What do you think is going to come out of this?
I think a lot of awareness, number one. I think maybe it'll help agents not feel cornered, number two. And at least on the lending side, it should, create more. I mean, at the end of the day, let's back up. Whether they receive technical disclosures or not, it's not good business. It's just simply not good business to have the same platform be incentivized to go through their lending portal when being on the lending side, there is so much nuance, there is so much communication, there is so much uncertainty when you're talking about a purchase that is this expensive that I almost feel bad for the agents that are not able to work with a lender that they trust to work with their client, because imagine getting a lead and then you have to dish it off to somebody else. You're losing so much control over the transaction. Again, it's just not a good customer experience.
It's not good. It's not good for the buyers to not have choice. It assaults the free market, all with this intention for Zillow to have everything on this one platform. I can't, we're all kind of trying to figure out what the end game is here. Our time is running out, which I hate because I feel like we could talk for an hour. But final thoughts, do you think it's suspicious that Fannie Mae is removing the 620 minimum credit score?
Suspicious? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I think it's suspicious. I think, again, it comes back to everything is going to be, I don't look at it that way. I just look at, okay, so here's another thing that I'm going to get asked about. What is my take on it? How do I explain it? my take is the risk, again, will still be baked into the cost of the rates and everything. So sure, maybe you can get a DU approval for a lower credit score, but they still have to, be eligible. They still have to, there's still debt to income ratios, and those rates are going to cost more. Everything is, you have a lower credit score, your rate's going to be higher.
Right.
Like nothing is free. Everything is, there's only so many levers we can pull. So if we're pulling this one, well, everything balances out. So suspicious, I haven't thought that much about it. I guess I could see, well, how about this? Why do you feel it's suspicious?
I don't know if it's suspicious. I'm asking if it's suspicious. I thought the timing was suspicious because it comes out at the same time as this 50-year loan. I'm like, nobody wants a repeat of 2008, right? We don't want that. We want good qualified buyers to have housing affordability. That's the end goal, right? And, however we get there, it works for me. If credit score, the way credit scores, and this is a whole other episode, but credit scores are kind of under attack anyway. There have been other changes to credit score things.
Right,
They took away the 3, now they're making it just 1, and the whole thing. So, it's just going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. We're at the baby beginning of it, but I feel like where there's a will, there's a way. Not everybody has rich parents. And just like me, the FHA loan was a way for me to get in. So I would say as long as you have good guidance and you use your brain about this could be an opportunity. And it doesn't need to be loaded politically. That's what I really think.
If you take a step back, you look at what are all these moves leading towards, and it's the same thing. It's trying to make people buy houses. It's trying to make it more affordable. It's trying to wake up this frozen housing market where there's so many buyers stuck and there's so many sellers. I don't know if you saw that just announced the portable mortgage thing that Trump has been talking about, where there are a lot.
No. Oh my God.
This is just like new as of like yesterday or today. I saw one thing about it, so I'm not saying I've done my full due diligence, but I believe there are talks about having portable mortgages, which would allow people to essentially take their mortgages onto another onto somewhere else. Right.
Whoa.
So that is a huge push.
We're going to save that for next time. 100%. That's very interesting.
Again, another move to get people into homes.
Get them back in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. And especially in person. It's such a pleasure to have somebody in the studio. Yay. And will you come back? Maybe monthly updates?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
I could talk forever on this stuff, so let's go.
All right. Thank you so much, Matthew.
Of course.
I have a love-hate relationship with AI, and in my pursuit to figure out all of the different ways tools are being sold to us and manipulated and overtly pushed on real estate agents, I'm pretty convinced that AI is moving faster than we can verify its accuracy or even imagine the consequences of incorrect information. However, Summer Goralik, a former DRE investigator, is here with me today to talk about what she's discovered in her world of compliance around realtors using AI tools and to talk a little bit about the private listings debate. Welcome, Summer.
Hi there.
Hi. Summer, in your Inman article, you warned that agents need to think like compliance officers when using AI. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, we're surrounded by headlines right now where AI is the savior. It's going to solve all agents' problems. And I have clients that are relying more and more on AI to do things. And, all of my warning signs go up. I mean, I literally do feel like I should preface my answer by saying, I feel like I am the only one at the AI party not having a good time.
No, you're not the only one. I don't know if you saw this, but I have a YouTube channel, right? It's called Real Estate AI Coach. I was so excited about the possibility of what was being sold. I'm like, I'm going to use this like an ordinary agent. I'm going to record myself trying out these tools. And so it started out with me just downloading apps that are being sold to us, like Sidekick, House Canary, like all of these like CMA valuation tools, data, whatever tools. And I started using them and I realized this isn't right. Like the data's not right. The comps aren't right. There's a difference in $1 million in value here. Sometimes they violate fair housing when you're asking it to help you write a listing description. You have to be so specific with the I'm like an ordinary real estate agent is not necessarily going to do all this at first. It's going to take a whole industry shift to make sure everybody's kind of playing by the same rules to get the right results. And I thought our MLSs should not have had these tools on our dashboard without vetting them. That was one of my concerns. But
Yes.
do you see particular tools? So anyway, I realized it's Courtney versus AI. I shouldn't have called it real estate AI coach. I should have called it Courtney versus the AI because ultimately it was.
Yeah,
I'm not
Summer,
I'm not
actually.
with it. Yes, I'm with Summer in the camp at the party, not having fun.
Yeah,
We
that's
go out
right.
back and smoke cigarettes.
I have one friend. No, I mean, and this is really what it boils down to. So I am not against AI. I think AI can do a lot of I mean, I sit back behind my computer and I say, wow, it really is incredible. But it's also incredibly inaccurate sometimes. And to the point where I'll ask, ChatGPT, for example, or other AI tools, I'll say, what is the law that came into effect this year that put, mandatory buyer representation agreements in place? And it will give me a made up law. And then I'll tell AI, I'm sorry, that I know that's not the right answer. Can you please give me the right answer? And it literally gave me the same wrong answer 3 times. So and then when I have those experiences, I think, okay, but what if someone wasn't the wiser, right? Someone is punching in these queries, they're getting answers, and they're literally running away with it. And that's really terrifying to me. And I know that AI can solve a lot of problems. I mean, let me give you an example. The brokers in California should have written policies and procedures in place. And, there are companies that you can buy these policy manuals from. You can get one from the California Association of Realtors. You can get these manuals. But now, to shortcut to save money, brokers are having AI prepare those policy manuals. And they've come to me, Summer, will you look at this and will you, you edit it and put whatever we're missing in there? And I'm going through it and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's completely recited requirements incorrectly. Now, imagine if they didn't have a compliance person or a legal person on the sidelines, like vetting AI. Like, would they vet it? Or would they just distribute that to their agents and say, yeah, please sign it that you're going to abide by these requirements and the requirements are wrong? So,
well, I think real estate is unique, and we're unique because we have first of all, it's a highly litigious industry, right? Like real estate agents are not attorneys, and yet we're held sometimes to the legal standard of, I feel like anyway, we're held to understanding the law, understanding the rules at a very high level, right?
Yes.
And so an ordinary real estate agent who just gets their license, goes and works for a brokerage who's supposed to be handling all the compliance stuff, and then is starting to use these tools, give advice. There's a conference of females in the real estate industry that's been around for at least a few years. And I saw in one of their Facebook posts that they had done a session with an AI expert. And the AI expert was like, yeah, you can even use ChatGPT to review your contracts and put paraphrase certain contract clauses to make it easier for your clients to understand. I was like, no, that is such a bad idea. But what it does is it reveals all the holes in our kind of like industry standards for expertise, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a naysayer against AI when I have these discussions because there are many, many benefits to using AI, and AI is only going to get smarter. But I feel like I'm never going to forget this distrust I have of it because I've seen what it can do and what it can't do. And here, at the end of the day, I mean, if I could just simplify it for your audience, right? Humans get licenses. Humans are the fiduciaries. At the end of the day, it's the agent's license that is on the line. So how much do you care about that license? And listen, even when you do everything right in real estate, as you know, people are going to file a complaint. I just think AI kind of ups the ante because it's very tempting for agents to get these quick solution out of the tools, not vet them for total accuracy, and then run to your client. Run to their client with it. There's a real danger with doing that. So my messaging has been, yes, remember agents, you are the fiduciary. And if anything, treat, your AI tool, whatever you're using, treat it as the best assistant you ever had. But the only
assistant you still need to check.
The only problem, right, is that assistant is not licensed. So what is a non-licensee able to do, right? You wouldn't tell your non-licensed assistant, hey, prepare this contract and send it out to the seller. No way. You would never do that. You have to do the same thing. with AI, basically.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, I've seen AI generate, okay, during the fires, we had like a document going around that was trying to help people. We were trying to get access to different resources for our clients whose houses were literally burning down. And there was this document floating around. It was like a Google sheet. And so I put it into the it was Gamma. I put it into Gamma. So Gamma app is a presentation maker.
Yep.
You can lock the data, right? So there's a button where you can lock, but you upload a PDF or doc and it turns it into a beautiful presentation. Can I tell you something? It manufactured the Acme Department of Fire Resources or something like that with a fake phone number, a fake website. I'm like, in the spirit of moving efficiently, which a lot of agents have to do throughout their day, right? We're back to back with appointments. We're running here, we're running there. We're like, these tools can save us time. When you go back and look at what they actually do sometimes, if you actually look at it, like, I was like, wow, it looks really pretty. I sent it to my quality control editor, and she's like, Courtney, none of this stuff exists. I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't even ready for the idea that it would do that. Like, that's how new it was. To be fair, this was like in January or something. But that was my first red flag, kind of like your moment. That was when I was like, wow, it just made up so much. It makes up quotes. If you try and click the source, it puts quotes. It puts quotation marks, and you're like, where is this quote from? Send me the source material. And it's like, oh no, it's not source material. I'm like, this is very dangerous.
The funny thing is, if you challenge AI and you say, no, that's not right, you're right. That was wrong. Let me try it again. I mean, you can actually convince AI. You can convince AI to do things, right? I mean, I know that sounds weird, but like it's like someone sent me a joke. I asked AI if I could eat a poisonous berry, and AI said that was fine. And then 10 hours later, the human calls from the hospital, those berries were poisonous. You're right, AI says. They are poisonous. Let me tell you some other poisonous berries you shouldn't eat. So, yeah.
Right. Yes. It's like a yes man. I do think that I've actually seen that it's programmed to endorse whatever it thinks you want it to hear. Yeah. So it's trying to know what result you want. Like it's trying to give you the answer that you want. So in this recent project that I was doing for my Harvard program, we have to figure out like kind of like absorption rates, right? And so I'm like, I'm searching the internet for absorption rates in a particular market, and I realized it could build a case. I tested it, building a case for a certain number and against a certain number. Right. And it can build the case either way. But I think the truth is out the window. Like it's all just interpretation. It's interpreting what it thinks you want to hear, and then it'll give you that. So that is very, very dangerous. Also for real estate agents, I think the fair housing component and marketing rules around and
biases. Yeah, for sure.
The bias, but also like, we're not allowed to say certain words in our marketing. And even if you tell it, like abide by fair housing rules, there are state and like in DC, there are more protected classes than in California, for example. Like you have to be so clear. You need to know, avoid these things before you feed it anything to do with marketing, That's right. Right.
You're what you're plugging in, you have to be super careful. And when it's coming out, and my big message is if you're going to use AI, and I urge you to use it, right? The future is using it, obviously. And that's where I am not a naysayer, but you have to vet everything. So if you're going to use AI, you're going to have to use it responsibly. And I'm waiting for the California Department of Real Estate. I know it's forthcoming where they're going to give some good guidance to their licensees on this.
Good. I'm so glad. I wish they would have done it 6 months ago. Like we need our associations and the Department of Licensing, everything to move faster than us. And they're kind of defensive.
I know. No, I'm with you.
Move faster. Okay, we're running again a little out of time. I wish we had more time, and I certainly would love to have a longer conversation with you about all the things compliance. But in the spirit of moving on to this other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, are you willing to share with me what your thoughts are on this the private listing lawsuit portal war debacle that's going on right now? How does that fall in your wheelhouse?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm speaking just really frankly, I mean, I've written so many articles for Inman, right? I mean, I don't think it's any secret that I'm not a huge fan of the private listing network pitch. And I do mean pitch, right? So for me, it really comes down to this simple concept. if an agent is going out to their seller and they're selling them this idea to bring your property, let's start the property off the MLS underground.
Right.
I have
a three-phase marketing.
Yeah, I have a problem with that philosophy, because at that point, it's really not about the seller. It's about the brokerage. Granted, and that's taken into consideration. If the seller is walking into that meeting with the listing agent for the first time and saying, you know what, let me express to you my concerns. I think I want to do a kind of a more private sale. I have this, and this going on. That's a completely different story. And I'm not against a private listing. And that's a very natural thing. And guess what? The brokerage, as the fiduciary, is going to follow their seller's instructions. But when the reverse is true, it just seems a little dirtier, if you will.
So for you, the distinction is between like pushing it as a marketing tool versus having the seller present it as a, the way they want to handle the listing for an assortment of reasons. That's the distinction.
I mean, that's one really important distinction. I mean, granted, there's, every case is fact driven, right? There's, every case has a unique set of circumstances. But for me, I think that's one sort of common theme is, how was this private listing approached from the very beginning? And, I feel like a broken record, Courtney. I mean, I've said this on articles and interviews. I've talked about this. I'm sort of waiting for consumer complaints to roll in. So maybe I'm just hyping things on my own little horse here. But I am waiting for a consumer is going to get burned, and they've gotten burned for a lot less, by the way, and they file a complaint or they file a lawsuit.
Well, you know, though, that they sign an addendum, which I went over in my last episode, literally saying, I, the seller, understand that I might not get the highest price, that it might not be shown as much, that I might not get the best terms, but this is still the option and the route I want to go. And my question was, what is happening in those listing meetings that would have a licensee having a seller sign a document that says that?
Yeah.
I mean,
I wonder if data.
Why would anybody who wants to sell their house be like, I could sell this for less and, worse terms?
So in other words, if I'm reading you correctly, Courtney, one thing is on paper, but what's verbally being expressed to that seller, right? What do the text messages look like around this listing? What do the emails say? So,
but I just wonder if more consumer complaints haven't happened because they feel like they signed away their rights by choosing this route. Like, I would just imagine at the level that some brokerages are playing this game, they probably had attorneys review these addendums up and down to say this keeps you bulletproof from these types of lawsuits.
Listen, brokers and agents are getting sued all of the time, and buyers are signing thousands of documents. I don't know if what you're signing necessarily has this huge impact. And at least, we've seen from lawsuits that have happened in the past, right? So I wouldn't my hat on that, totally, but I understand where you're coming from with that. But I do think time will tell where this goes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, consumers are happy and regulators, they're saying that agents and brokers are fulfilling their fiduciary duty. Maybe it's a non-topic, but for me right now, it doesn't sit well in my stomach.
Do you think NAR has done enough to prevent future lawsuits around clear cooperation, given that Compass essentially said publicly, we're not going to abide by this anymore. We're going to do whatever the seller wants us to do.
Yeah, NAR has been so beaten down, right? They've been through hell and back. And so I think they're trying to
through hell and back too, to be fair.
100%. This has been fun for no one, right? Except private attorneys.
Another bad party. Yeah, only the attorneys get the cookies at this party.
Yeah. Yes. I think that if NAR had done more, maybe we wouldn't be here. But this is festering, right? It's utterly inconvenient that right on the coattails of the class action litigation, we now have this. So it's like, I don't know, real estate is just a hotbed of so many bad stuff. And unfortunately, we have these lawsuits that are going to be milestones to see what direction we go in.
Absolutely. That's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much for joining me on the Clean Close. And I'd love to have you back for a longer session and we can check in on this stuff and get more into the weeds on it, Summer.
That'd be awesome. I would love that. Thank you, Courtney.
Amazing. Thank you. If you like your real estate news headlines with some extra spicy salsa, please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, submit yourself as a guest, do the most. I'm here for it. I would love to include all voices on the Clean Close. Now, back to the show. The news is moving fast, but not faster than people are supposedly racing out of Manhattan, or so it seems from podcasters and the news world. Sheridan Wall, reporter for The Real Deal in Manhattan, is here to discuss the real impacts of the Mamdani election on the newsmakers of New York City and some other important news headlines that are affecting our industry. Welcome, Sheridan.
Hi.
Hi. Let's talk Mamdani first. In your news articles on November 5th and November 8th, you discuss the industry's response to the recent election. It seemed that many in the New York City market at first, like Jason Haber, he's like publicly being like, this guy is the worst. And then all of a sudden he gets elected and he's like, well, maybe we're going to try and work it out. What are you seeing on the ground there?
Yeah. So, I mean, initially there was a lot of kind of warnings about what a candidate like Zohran Mamdani, if he were to be elected, would, what kind of situation that would create in New York, particularly for real estate. But, and I don't even want to overstate that people, completely made a 180 and were like, oh, it's totally fine. Us supporting another candidate was, that we can forget about it. I mean, there is still, people have concerns. They are talking about them. They haven't stopped, kind of bringing up some of the issues that came up a lot during the lead up to the actual election. But I do think it's, New York. I had a broker tell me recently, never bet against New York. And I think that's something that most people here is kind of an ethos for people in the city, particularly in real estate. Real estate has a lot of ups and downs. So, one mayor doesn't really affect, and I think everybody knows that. And now it's kind of to a place where like the city needs housing. Everybody in real estate, is kind of.
But did you hear this thing though that Mamdani said? Okay, now you tell me what you think about this, because I thought this was kind of wild. He's like, we're gonna come to your properties, we're gonna inspect them, and if this property needs repairs, we're gonna tell you to do them, and if you don't do them, we're gonna do it ourselves. We're gonna send you a bill. I'm paraphrasing, guys. I'm paraphrasing. And then he said, and if you don't pay the bill, we're coming for your building. And I was like, whoa, that seems intense. Did you hear that?
I think I know what video you're referring to. I saw that.
Yes.
I mean,
yes,
I do.
Is that not causing widespread panic for landlords?
I'll say this. I write a lot about residential from like the kind of, when you think about what ends up in Mansion Global and in those kind of like $1 million penthouses, I write a lot about that. And those brokers, I think, have gotten a little more comfortable with Mamdani only because he's elected. They're working to build more housing. They think actually that's something he's interested in. I will say on the landlord side, there are a lot of concerns, particularly rent stabilized landlords that are in a lot of distress in New York. They're already they're already having a lot of issues. It's not something that they've been quiet about. And so I do think those landlords are nervous. I do think his election does make them more nervous. But I think that it's, at this point, it's kind of like the reality of the situation is he's going to be the next mayor. So I think everybody is trying to regroup and figure out, well, like, how can we work with him to get stuff done? And I think, landlords don't want their buildings to be bad. They don't want there to be problems. They don't want there to be issues. They are struggling to afford.
But it feels like it could be a setup. It's like it's creating a mechanism. Now, again, who knows? I mean, I've seen some outrageous things that he's run on. A lot of people say, well, even Trump ran on outrageous things that he could never implement, right? And so it's like maybe in the actual job of being the mayor, he's going to realize there are some limitations to this. There are checks and balances with the governor. Like maybe there's not going to be, you don't just have the right to go in as a city and just like, I'm going to take your land. Like you can't just do that. So I'm hoping that there's some common sense that kicks in where it doesn't just create this like rich versus poor scenario. I can tell you that I also spoke with some celebrity New York City real estate agents who were like, it's always kind of good for somebody. Like if you're during COVID when the prices came down and people who would be the people who could flee right now, right? They already bought another house somewhere else during COVID. So it's like there might not be this mass exodus after all because they already have their other house. But why would they leave unless like living conditions get really bad? Otherwise, it's kind of a wait and see moment. But if prices come down on these luxury properties, there are going to be buyers who are going to buy during the low. And that's going to be good for making the market move. Do you think that's the right way of kind of looking at it from your research?
I mean, I think that that's something that's been floated to me as well. I do think that the general consensus is like, just like you said, it's always good for someone. And I will point out, actually, the luxury market in Manhattan over the last few weeks has been booming. There's been a lot of contracts signed for luxury properties, big deals coming through. I think Brooklyn there was a townhouse there or not a townhouse, a house in Gravesend that sold for $32 million, which is a really high price. Like the market is moving. So it's always good for someone. And I don't know that we're going to see discounts necessarily, not with this kind of momentum. So we'll see.
So what do you think people, investors, for example, should keep their eyes on New York right now? Like should outside, because you're obviously in Manhattan, but, what about people who are over here? Should we be taking our money out of LA and like kind of looking at this as a potential opportunity?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's way too early to know how anything is going to shake out. But there are brokers talking about particularly telling sellers not to necessarily right now capitulate to buyers who are trying to negotiate on Mamdani fears, because we don't actually know what's going to play out, and so we'll see. But I don't know if I can be giving that kind of advice just yet, but it's definitely something that papers are talking about.
I have to ask because you're the man on the ground. You're the one doing all these interviews with the people who are really selling the real estate, But I think it's not a bad thing for. I think I can see New York City is a resilient city. There's no question about it. It's suffered lots of tragedy over the years, and it always rebuilds. I think that any market has opportunity. LA's going through a really rough patch right now, and I still think many landlords have been beat up by COVID tenants' rights policies and are finding it hard to make any profit on their income, especially mom and pops. So. I hope it works out for you guys. I really do. But I might check back in with you to see how it's all unfolding after January, so we know where we should put our attention, whether or not we should start moving our money if it's like a really good opportunity to buy in New York at any point soon. Plus, just a reminder, we're licensed in Florida too. We can handle that. Okay, I want to move on to another story that you wrote, which was actually the story that really caught my eye, because in Los Angeles, there was a lot of this type of acquisition money flying around a few years ago during the beginning days of Compass being in our market. But, also other brokerages started to try and compete that way, like paying for people to move. And so you recently were investigating a New York City brokerage that actually it landed in court as a result of these clawbacks. Can you explain the foundation of the court case?
Yeah, so there's actually two court cases I've looked at, and they're both pretty similar. But they kind of arose from, like, just like you were saying, the history of clawbacks. I mean, they've been a part of broker contracts for a really long time, but they kind of ramped up when Compass came on the scene and was, paying these kind of exorbitant sign-on bonuses, and brokerages were trying to compete with losing their agents and then also having to pay more to attract new talent. So it kind of created this environment.
Let's define clawbacks. Can you define clawbacks for the audience so they know exactly what we're talking about?
Yeah, so clawbacks are essentially a brokerage saying that, if you leave, pretty standard, your commission rate will drop. So if you tell us you're leaving, deals that close after you tell us they're leaving, you'll get a smaller percentage of the commission than you would have previously. That's pretty standard. And now there are other parts of that too that are like, if we gave you a marketing budget of $30,000, you'll have to pay that back if you leave within a year, 2 years, 3 years. So all that depends specifically what brokerage, but that's the kind of policy we're talking about.
Right, exactly. So it's like, after after a brokerage offers you as an agent or your team some money to move, they give you a record deal. They give you some money and they're like, you can spend it on marketing, you can spend it on, whatever, logo redesign, branding, etc. We're going to give you this money, but if you leave, you're going to owe us this money, and that is the clawback, right? So, okay, so tell me more about the lawsuits.
So the one I wrote about most recently was a broker who had left to start his own business through side. He had told me, had a great relationship with Brown Hair Stevens, had been there 20 years. And then, just wanted to do his own thing, wanted to be his own boss. So he left. He was still owed, he knew that he was going to take home a smaller portion of the commission because he had left, but he was still owed some. In his complaint, he says that he is still, owed some of that money. And so when he went to them to get, the 40% on those deals, they told him, actually, you owe us a lot of money because we've given you these perks, and per your contract, you're supposed to pay us for them if you leave within a certain amount of time. There, part of the crux of his argument, which is similar to another lawsuit against the same firm, was that, they had, over the years, they had made promises to him, like giving him an office in a certain, branch of their brokerage, and some other, and a bonus that was supposed to be, I think, if I remember correctly, about $75,000. He said he only got, about half of that. So, his argument is kind of, well, I was supposed to get all of these perks. Those were part of the, and now I'm getting clawed back money that I didn't even receive part of the promises that I was given.
Right, the perks. So he's like, you're in breach
Yes,
too.
exactly. That's that's one side of it. And Brown Harris, even just to make it clear, they've said that this lawsuit is, they're denying the claims he's making in this lawsuit. But the second part of it was the clawback piece, which, his argument was kind of, I have worked at this firm and I've brought in this much business. Anything that you've invested in me, you've already gotten back based on my performance, based on, like the cut of my deals that you've been taking. And in particular, and this is where it gets a little nuanced, so I won't go into too much detail, but, he's kind of arguing the timeline that they had laid out. And he was basically saying that whatever, the investments that he had made that they were asking him to pay back had already vested. Like, he'd already reached the time limit. And this brokerage in particular, in the previous lawsuit that was filed, a broker had pointed out that every time he signed his ICA, there was this, allusion to like a policy manual or a manual that he had never actually been given. And so it was that's a separate claim, but it was kind of a similar argument of like, the policies in the manual are allowed to change, except that we don't really know when they're changing. We're supposed to like look back to check when they've changed. And so it's just interesting. Like,
you know what, you're bringing up it's a really important point here, because I think, have you ever worked at a pizza place?
At a pizza place specifically? No.
Yeah. Okay. When you work at a pizza place, like in any capacity, you do not want to eat pizza, like you get so sick of the smell of pizza, and like normally pizza is like, that smells so good. No, you don't want it. You want to like barf if I feel like sometimes real estate agents, when it comes to their contracts, they're so used to going through every single line of a contract for all of their clients. They do the best due diligence, but when it comes to them looking at their own contracts, they don't negotiate as hard for clarity or for escape clauses, or, what happens if both parties don't perform? What are the remedies? Like, how do we how do we solve this without it going to a lawsuit? Like, they really don't always protect themselves the best way. And I do think that brokerages writ large take advantage of, they have attorneys that are working at a corporate level to rewrite policy manuals and ICAs and all that kind of thing sometimes, if you're not using the boilerplate ones, addendums to the ICA certainly, that are, that maybe agents aren't taking as close a look at as they should. I don't know one agent who ever gets outside attorneys to review anything that's in one of these types of agreements. So moving forward, what do you think the agents should do to prevent any confusion when it comes to clawbacks, if they do decide to move to a brokerage that's going to pay them to go?
I mean, I do think it would be helpful to hire probably an outside attorney. I think, probably anybody that ever signs an employment contract above a certain amount of money should probably have somebody look at that. But I do think it's to ask about it. Right? I mean, I think part of the frustration with these that I am sensing from these brokers in these lawsuits is, that these things weren't flagged necessarily. And I understand why not. You're recruiting someone, like you want them to stay with you. You don't want to bring attention to the parts of the contract that are maybe, not as favorable to them, or something that you just, like people who don't want to sign a prenup, you don't want to talk about divorce before you even get married. And I think it's a similar concept. But I think you have to ask, and you have to ask explicitly how exactly does this work? When can you change it? And I think that the misconception, particularly with the first lawsuit against this brokerage that I read through, was, when things can change, and if there's no kind of, specific parameters, then maybe that's something you can ask for, that can we write into this contract that I be notified when a change is made or something. But I think all of this is calling more attention to, like, you've got to sit down and talk to people about this. It's a fact of probably every ICA that any agent is going to sign now, just because of the recruiting environment that we're in. Most companies have these policies.
Yeah, almost. So you kind of feel like maybe our associations and the legal entities that are supposedly in defense of real estate agents should consider that when they revise the ICA, and consider giving agents and teams and brokerages some guidance. Because I know a lot of brokerages out there that are right now in the process of mergers and acquisitions, franchise opportunities, et cetera. And there's a lot of obtuse language. I think a lot of agents and teams and, entities, boutique brokerages especially, are not really ready to completely don't completely understand what they're signing. So the more you know. Sheridan, I have to leave it there. We have to wrap up, but I'm so glad you were able to join me. Thank you so much for the excellent journalism. I'm going to be posting links to all of these stories. You can find Sheridan at The Real Deal, and I hope you'll join me on a future episode of The Clean Close.
Thank you so much, Courtney. It was a pleasure.
Wow, that was a jam-packed episode. So grateful to my guests, Summer Goralik, Sheridan Wall, and Matthew Fine from Blueprint Home Loans. We're definitely going to have all these special guests on another extended version of The Clean Close. But as I wrap, I just want to remind you guys that I solved the problem. I want you to think about this as a solution. One statewide MLS and one nationwide off-market listing network. Can we try it? Can we try it? I think that would solve all of our problems. Let's go. And I hope to see you on the next edition of The Clean Close.